Sanjeev, you can hear me. It is 6, so if you are ready from your side, we can get started.
Sir, please start.
Okay. Are we live streaming?
Yes.
Fine.
We can't see you. I can't see you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Wherever you are listening to us from different parts of the state as well as from different parts of the country, and maybe a few from outside the country too. Kannur Obstetric and Gynecological Society, in collaboration with the Kerala Federation of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, as well as the national organization, Federation of Obstetric and Gynecological Society of India, in collaboration with the Indian College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, bring this webinar on a very, very relevant topic that we are dealing with. I'm sure all of us do realize that we are going through some struggling times, through some crisis phase because of COVID-19. So this webinar would be dedicated to tackling the problem for a health worker during COVID times. So as I already told, it's a joint collaborative effort. We have two experts to give us 2 lectures on some very valid topics. For the first lecture, it's my privilege to invite none other than Dr. V.P. Paili. Dr. V.P. Paili is the senior consultant and the head of the Department of OBG at Rajagiri Hospital at Alua, and also chairperson of the Confidential Review of Maternal Health. He's been the past president of Kerala Federation of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. He was the past head of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Jubilee Mission Hospital, as well as Thrissur Medical College. And as many of you would already be knowing, he was the master brain behind the Quality Control Standards Initiative, a pioneer in vaginal surgeries. Many of you would have already listened to him, as well as would have watched his surgeries over the years. Vaginal surgeries for prolapse and non-defined vaginal hysterectomy, the master brain behind EMOCALS, a renowned faculty, as you'd all agree, at international and national conferences, and we lovingly call him the teacher of teachers. Also a person who has contributed a lot of surgical instruments on his name, which have made surgery much more easier for us. So it's a privilege to have Dr. Paili talk on a very relevant topic of today, which is a common sense approach for COVID protection for healthcare workers. I'm sure we realize that this pandemic is increasing in severity and the numbers are rising, both of the COVID positive patients as well as the suspects. And we probably do not have, with the best of efforts that the government is taking, we still do not have enough personal protective equipments. So where do we strike the balance? And that is what Dr. Paili is going to elaborate over the next 30 minutes. So over to Paili, sir, for his talk on common sense approach for COVID protection for healthcare workers.
Thank you, Shaijas, and thank you all the viewers across the country. Good evening. When Shaijas asked for this presentation, I thought of wording it as he said already, common sense approach to COVID infection prevention for health workers. Why I thought of that was, as all of you know, across the world, there is great concern that we don't have personal protection equipment. And at the same time, we hear about hundreds of our colleagues, doctors as well as nurses, dying for want of PPE. This certainly will frighten all of us. And that is why we thought we should have a practical approach to the problem. Now, I will probably start with a disclaimer. I'm only an obstetrician, not a virologist, not infectious disease specialist, or a clinical epidemiologist. So whatever, I think somebody has to mute, somewhere the phone is on.
Can we see Dr. Paili? Yeah. Can we see and listen?
The information I give is what I gathered from literature, social media, and on personal analysis. I would say a lot from social media because these days, that is the main source of information for us on this topic. For those of you who are from outside Kerala, I would just reel out This is a paper report in our state on 7th of this month, where they reported as a headline that 3 doctors and 46 Kerala nurses infected with COVID in Mumbai. And of course, we already know about many other casualties for our colleagues. For example, a cardiothoracic surgeon known to some of us here in India passed away, or rather had to lose his life in Wales where he was working. He was redeputed to look after these wards and then ultimately had to lose his life. Hundreds of health workers died in Italy. You all know about it. So with COVID-19 spreading in India, we did not have that much of a concern in Kerala, but now the news coming out from other parts of India, especially from Mumbai, Chennai, and Delhi, we are really concerned about safety of health workers. And that's why we thought we'll take this up. This is just an interactive session. It's only natural that we are concerned about it. But it is not just a selfish interest to save our own lives. The health workers like doctors and nurses are infected and they are out of service. Who will be there to treat the patients? So that is all the more important reason that we should protect the health workers. I thought we'll consider this under the following headings. Why are the health workers at an increased risk? Very obvious. How does the virus spread? Just a little bit about it. What are the steps needed to prevent health workers from getting the disease? That will be the area where we will have a thrust more. What should the government and the society level they should do? What should each hospital and the department do? And more importantly, what should the individual health worker do for personal protection? And briefly, later on, is there any role for chemoprophylaxis? That is what we thought we'll outline. That's the outline for us. Why is a health worker at increased risk? Is very obvious. Affected or suspected patients come to the hospital and we get exposed. And exposure at close quarters is what gives the disease. So it's very obvious. Now, that brings us to the question of how does the virus spread? I hope all of you know that in the beginning, WHO insisted this is a droplet infection. But later, they agreed to the possibility that aerosols also may be there. But still, they don't agree that it's an airborne infection. That is where I feel personally a difference of opinion, because whatever has happened, the way the disease has spread, the way our other co-passengers and all those people got the disease, it is surprising that it is only a droplet infection. It doesn't look like that. The way it spreads has huge implications for the way we take precautions against the spread of infection. For example, if it's a droplet infection, it's fairly contained. You have to take care of the droplets and maybe hand hygiene to prevent the droplet falling on objects and as fomites getting infection to a person. But whereas recently, I am sure many of you would have seen this video with the Japanese brought out, where micro droplets coming out of a person sneezing spreads much farther than 1 meter. That is usually what a droplet was supposed to travel, and stays in the air as a cloud. So this video, I don't want to play it completely, but this is with this special camera and using laser rays, they showed how we can see the spread of the micro droplets when a person is sneezing. And they are just making a person just sneeze by stimulating the anterior nares and just seeing how the micro droplets spread. Many of you would have seen this video because this is spread in the social media. You can see that cloud around. And if you go further, what will happen? You see, when the happens, the major, bigger droplets drop down, but that alone is not the story. As you can see here, see the storm, something like a storm in a microscopic level is happening, and that is spread farther away from the individual. And this is being explained by this infectious disease specialist who was explaining how it can spread to a wider away, farther away from the individual concerned. And as you can see here, if you have a room in which there are people around you, and you can see how that storm or the micro droplets can spread and affect, it can get inhaled. And not only that, see the typical micro droplet movement. The bigger ones will settle down, but the tiny ones will remain as a cloud in the room and slowly settle down. So you can see an act of cough or sneezing will throw away that micro droplets far and wide, and then it will remain in the room like that. And they have already shown by experiments that it can stay for hours and some of them even days on the objects on which it settled down. So this knowledge by which the virus can spread is very important for us. Because of that, we have to take precautions, take it as an airborne infection. This is my conclusion about it. There is general feeling, even from the CDC, when you look at it, that there is general feeling now that there's no point arguing about whether one is droplet, the other is micro droplet, the other is aerosol and all that. They overlap. And I think the way this pandemic is spreading, we have to accept that this is an airborne infection and should take precautions as though it is an airborne infection. So that's what I wanted to drive home to you. Now, what steps should be taken by the various people involved? What should the government at the government level do? Most of the countries, as you know, as of now, have declared lockdown or emergency. Even countries which were holding back, for example, Singapore, for a long time, they were resisting declaring an emergency, declaring lockdown, but of late, they had to. Japan, which we all thought was escaping, now it's a not only emergency declared, it's for months old. So we are very proud in Kerala that our government took steps proactively, very early, and that is why we are all probably sitting around now talking about it. Otherwise, I don't know how many of us, especially the older among us, would have been in the hospital bed. But it's not only the question of declaring, it's enforcing it. And that brings in all arms of the government, including the law enforcement agencies. And that is what every government is finding it difficult. But only if that is implemented, as you know, the social interaction will be reduced and the spread will be reduced. Now, what should the hospital do? Triaging. Right from the very beginning, this is a word which is not very familiar to us, but now for a while now, we have been hearing it every day. There should be triaging or streaming or separating out the affected with the unaffected. And second thing is, hospitals should provide protective equipment. And they should identify special areas, wards, theaters, labor room for the infected patients to prevent them from mixing with the uninfected. And this is what we are doing in our hospital. At the very entrance, only one entrance for the whole, and other than the emergency, they are all checked whether they have fever. We do know that fever need not be there, but at least there is nothing much other than that we can clinically check whether the person coming in is a potential carrier. Then we ask them questions about their travel history, contact history, and then it is entered. Now we have a software developed and the details will immediately go to the patient's electronic medical record and they are guided to the concerned place, not loitering around in the wards, and a mask is given. As of now, they have to pay for it, but a mask is given and they are asked to wear it throughout their stay in the hospital, even if they are going out. In the public also now our government has insisted, whoever is in the public spaces also should wear the mask. And there is provision to hand hygiene and washing the hands. So this is at the entrance to the hospital, what we have been doing. The other steps we have taken, I'm sure all of you would have, patients and relatives need not tell the truth about the contacts and exposure. That's the fact. I'm sure all of you would have this experience. So we have to treat every patient as a potential carrier of COVID-19. That is the assumption on which we have to take our steps. Now, what should the department do? Working arrangement to reduce exposure should be planned. We should have a backup team in case we get exposed, the people on the floor get exposed, there should be a backup team. So what is suggested, and which I am sure many of you would have implemented, is to split the team into 2 or 3. What we have done is split into 2. One team remains at home and the other is on the floor. But in case there is an unexpected exposure, then the team will have to go on quarantine and the people on reserve at home will come and take over. We do rotate weekly. There are people who rotate fortnightly. I feel that is not required. A weekly rotation should be fine. And we should have clear guidelines for the management, what exactly to do, train the employees, how to put on the various personal protection equipments. And later today, Betsy will tell us more about it. As an individual level, what should we do for personal protection? Social distancing, hand hygiene are well known. Everybody has to practice it. I'm not going to go more on that. But mask, gloves, goggles, coverall, and shoe cover. These are the things for our protection, of which I'll be dealing with some of them, and Betsy will tell you about the others. One thing we have to remember is, this virus, which we know now comes through the air, gets into our body mainly through our nostrils as well as our mouth. So protecting that and making sure the air that we breathe in, whatever goes in, is clean of that virus is the safeguard for us. And that makes mask the most important. But it can also go through the eyes because the mucous membrane over the eye and can be a source where it can get deposited and of course then spread further. So we have to protect the eyes also. These are the 3 inlets for this virus to our body. We have to remember that. We will protect our skin, our hand, everything, but that's for different reasons. It doesn't seem to be invading through an entire skin. So this will be the emphasis on our personal protection. And of course, we should have social distancing, avoid crowded places. Patients should be kept at least 3 feet away. And we should evolve strategies for that. We'll explain that again as we go to the level of the OP. Hand hygiene is crucial. Not that the virus goes through the hand epithelium or the covering, but with our hand, we will go, all of us have the habit of touching the ear, also the eyes or the mouth, or even chewing the nail, and all these are habits with us. So that can easily take from wherever we touch the organism to our body. And wash with soap and water frequently. Use gloves liberally. And then what we thought was, when we use the sanitizer very frequently, because it contains alcohol, it may not be very friendly to our skin. So what we thought, one suggestion is, you can put on examination gloves and sanitize on top of that, and don't have to change if you are abdominal palpation. Don't have to change after every palpation. So these are just suggestions. Mask is our main weapon against COVID-19. But we have to use the proper type, should use it properly, and dispose it properly. Now the different types of masks, I'm sure through the social media you would have seen so many innovations how to make cloth mask. Surgical mask is the one probably in the majority of situations that we are going to use. And in special situations, we have to be prepared to use N95 or respirator. Cloth mask is enough for the lay public when they move around and all that. And it achieves the droplet from going from a person either coughing or sneezing or talking loud or shouting. All this, we can generate microparticles of the saliva, which can carry the virus. That can be blocked by a cloth mask. And of course, it can be washed, ironed, and reused. You would have seen the videos circulating around where somebody is making mask out of a t-shirt or even an underclothes. So all these are there moving around. That brings us to the more important one, that is surgical mask. As you know, it's a triple layer mask. It's supposed to give up to 75% protection from viral infections as well. And the filter is in the middle layer. I'm not going to open up one and show you, but this is a typical one. It has the pleats in the middle so that it will spread over the body. It can have elastic bands on the sides, which can go around the ear, but for a surgical procedure, I don't think that will be the ideal. and I'll explain that a little more. It is important to wear the mask properly. It has got a metal piece, usually an aluminum piece at the top, so that you can flex it and make it snugly fitting at the side of the nose. That's very important because if when we exhale, the air goes by the side of the nose, then it can fog your glasses, and that will be a problem, especially if you are doing surgery. A mask should cover the nostril and the mouth, these two openings. So it should go to the bridge of the nose and should go below the mandible. And on the side, you can see, this is the problem which I find, because as you can see here, there is that gap over there. And that gap, through that, air will come in. So if you believe that the use of the mask is to filter the air, when the air goes in by the side, then it will not filter. And you are taking the virus with you. So that is why I feel it's important for us to wear it without air leak on the side. And that's why I suggested we can have an additional tail in the middle, so that when that is also tied like this, there is less chance. As you can see, it will be now snugly touching the skin all around. It is touching the skin all around. It is touching the skin over here, and the bridge of the nose is corrected like that also. So that is what we would suggest. That brings us to the special mask. That is the N95 mask, or the respirator as they call it. It is a special filter made of polypropylene in the middle. And I hear from the person who innovated it, Peter Tsai, has been saying it is not just the polypropylene mesh there that is alone. It has got electromagnetic activity. But what is most important is, as I told you about the surgical mask, this also should be snugly fitting all around. If not, the air enters through the side, there's unfiltered air, and you will get the virus, you breathe it in. So you should actually breathe in and breathe out through the mask, the layers of the mask. That applies to surgical mask as well. And I'm sure all of you would have been familiar with this triangular piece, cup-shaped mask, which should be worn snugly like that, all around. In fact, probably Betsy will consider this more or explain that more. There should be a fitting for your N95 mask before you actually don the personal protection equipment. When to wear and what type is the question. For general use, if it is just to prevent droplet being transmitted between individuals, general use cloth mask may be enough. It's a little more comfortable as well. But surgical use, when you are doing procedures, we should use the surgical mask, and surgical mask like this, as you know, has got the two colors, the blue on the outside and the white on the inside. The inside is more absorbent for our droplets. The outside is impervious for water, but air can filter through that. So we should be using the surgical mask most of the time. But if you are dealing with a known COVID patient, N95 or one of the other types of respirator is important. The question often asked, especially now that there's an acute shortage of these in the world market, whether we can reuse it. Sterilization is possible, but if you are having a strategy of sterilizing and reusing, remember the people handling it are at high risk of getting infected. So that also we have to plan how we are going to do it. I was sent this, I think, by Mekha from Trichur. She has sent this. This is the AIMS protocol, All India Institute protocol. What it says is, you cannot read it, I know. What it says is to each employee, they are going to give 5 masks. They use 1 per day like that. And once the 4, they are asked you to rotate 4. Once 4 are over, the 5th day, the number 1 will come back to be used. In between, every day after use, you have to keep it in a special paper bag, exposed and in a dry area, so that when it is drying in about 3 days, by the 4th day, it's available for us without virus load. This is what actually even Peter Tsai also in his paper recommended. One way of reusing the mask. And you can use, say, 5, 10 times like that if it is not damaged. You have to check every time whether it is damaged. There are other ways of sterilization. As I told you, Peter Tsai, who is the innovator of this type of mask, suggested different ways of sterilization. And the drying and leaving for 4 days is what I told you. Heating to 70 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes and keeping in boiling water also is recommended. But he has warned us not to use ultraviolet light and not to use alcohol. I'm not sure whether it will be advisable to use ETO, ethylene trioxide, or even plasma for sterilization. I am not sure. But simpler means available for everybody is to allow it to dry. And again, he wants that you should not put it in the direct sunlight, because the ultraviolet light in the sunlight will reduce the efficiency of the filtering mechanism. Now that brings us to the next, that is chemoprophylaxis. Is there a role for chemoprophylaxis? What we talk about is hydroxychloroquine. There's a lot of controversy, especially after President Trump, right at the beginning, talked about it. And you know, recently there was some unnecessary comment from him warning India, if it doesn't give hydroxychloroquine, you will be punished and things like that. Unnecessary, typical Trumponian statements. I'm sure some of you would have seen this paper quoted from France. It came about 3 weeks ago, actually. I was quite interested to read through that. Many people have objected to this study, saying that it is a useless paper. And this one, I am sure you cannot read it. But if you look for Philippe Gautier, is the lead author. And this is hydroxychloroquine as a treatment for COVID-19, results of an open label, non-randomized clinical trial. They had only 26 patients, as we can imagine. Right at the beginning, they did it. But what attracted me most was that it was a well-done study, I would say, under the circumstances. You cannot randomize properly for a condition like this. So what they did was, those who were really affected were the treatment arm, and those who did not want to enter the trial were the other one. So as you can imagine, the ones who were in the control arm were the ones probably mildly affected. And one objection raised to this study is that on the treatment arm, one patient died, 2 or 3 left the arm, and all that like that. But I think under the circumstances, that was a good study where they were doing viral culture or viral isolation from the nose and the oropharynx every day for 6 days, and showed a very good graph saying that when they treated with hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, in 6 days' time, they became virus-free. And of course, you know that our own ICMR has come out with an advisory on how to use hydroxychloroquine for those who are looking after COVID-positive patients. ICMR does not recommend to all healthcare workers. And the other day when we had a webinar from AIIMS, I asked them, why is that when we all know that patients may not tell us the truth, every patient is a potential carrier? I thought that every healthcare worker should be given the option of trying this as a chemoprophylaxis. Anyway, ICMR has not come out like that. In our hospital, what we did was, we made it, there should be a prescription only drug. Those who have a cardiac problem or diabetes should be taking it certainly only under medical supervision. And the advantage is, it will not prevent you from getting the infection, but it will prevent you from getting the worst type of infection, especially with the lung involvement. That's all. So that way, I took it, and I thought some of our colleagues also did it. I would personally recommend to all healthcare workers, because it is known to be a virucidal agent and the complications are very minimum. But remember, it's only a prescription only drug, and those who are diabetic, it can lead to hypoglycemia. So you take it with food only and monitor your sugars. And those who have, especially any problem with the heart, should be under cardiology supervision, because the QT syndrome, prolongation of the QT interval, is the problem that can happen with it. So it should not be taken lightly by everybody over the counter. Now the next area that you have to protect, we talked about protecting the nose and the mouth, then the eyes. And for that, we can use ideally the goggles or even locally made visor. And this picture was sent to us again, the social media, from the Trichy Medical College, I think the social and preventive medicine, the community medicine department. And you would have seen many, many people across the world showing how we can make visor like that. And this is, I thought, very well done. So that's why I thought it's very cheap. We can use the transparent paper available for the overhead projector and then use it like that, or any other ways. What Betsy is also going to tell you about how to make it. Shoe cover. Many of the PPE that they make will have the feet also covered, along with the coverall as one piece, or we can have separate shoe cover. I'm sure Betsy is going to tell us about that also. The coverall has to be impervious to water and should cover from head to the foot. Donning and doffing, Betsy is going to show you with the video. So the questions that I was told to especially emphasize are, how are we going to protect ourselves in the OP? A few thoughts that we had was, don't allow more than one companion. Patient should be seated safely at least 3 feet away. Both patient and bystander should wear the mask. All staff should wear the mask. And we should have a liberal supply of examination gloves, facilities to wash with wash basin, water, running water, and of course, liberal use of sanitizer. These are the things what we should keep in mind. Like this is before the COVID days. Patient was sitting close to the doctor and nobody had mask. But after this, we have made sure that everybody is wearing the mask. Patient is very diplomatically taken to the opposite side of the table. And so invariably a distance will be maintained. I would expect that probably that doctor also could lean back rather than lean forwards. But of course, keeping away from the patient is not something which we are familiar with. And we should have liberal supply of the gloves, the sanitizer. There's a wash basin, as you can see. And this can be operated with the elbow, and disposal color-coded also close to that. Now the labor room. I think we should identify and leave apart a place where you will conduct delivery in a person under investigation, PUI they call it, or proven COVID positive patient. They should not be mixed with the others. So what we have done is we have kept one delivery cot and an area separately for that. Don't allow prolonged or difficult labor, because the longer you stay with the patient, more likely to get exposed. Patient also should be made to wear a mask, especially in labor. In many places, they have the habit of shouting. So they should wear the mask. Minimum required staff should be there. All staff also should wear full PPE, and for analgesia, prefer epidural. For the surgery, that is cesarean, we should have a low threshold for cesarean. This is what we thought we should have. Not that every woman should go for a cesarean, but a very low threshold for cesarean. Wear full PPE, prefer regional anesthesia, and procedure is as usual, but it will be a little more difficult with all these, with this PPE and 3 sets of gloves on top of it. Betsy will tell you more about it. And breastfeeding, as per woman's wish. Now, at the moment, there is nothing to tell us definitely to say no, even though, transplacental spread is now probably thought as a possibility. Still, many people may ask you to continue to give breastfeeding. But as the baby is coming out immediately, we may not go and put the baby for the hugging and all that. Mother should be wearing the mask. And there are people who recommend that you should keep the baby away at least for about 14 days. We are not yet sure what recommendation to give on these things. So in conclusion, friends, what I would suggest is, it's essential to give full PPE to all health workers dealing with known cases and persons under investigation due to the contact history if they have. For all practical purposes, for other situations, social distancing, surgical mask and gloves with frequent hand washing and sanitizing will be adequate. This is what I thought from the practical angle. And this is why I thought I'll call it as a common sense approach, because if we say that we should have PPE, full PPE to see a patient, that's not going to be practical. I'm sure you all see news reports about what's happening in the UK, in USA, and of course all of Europe, where they don't have PPE. We have seen that video clip which touched us so much. On both sides of this corridor, patients on the floor with mask and oxygen, but the doctor in the middle walking without even a mask. So if you say that we will work only if we have N95 mask. We can, because we were not threatened properly. But in parts of the world, it is not possible. The second thing to remember is, even in UK and USA, they are refusing to test the doctors and the nurses to know whether they have got the infection. Because if you see that they have infection, you have to send them off. So they are allowing people to keep away only if they have symptoms and not able to work. And even those who are proven positive may be called into work if you have nobody else there. So that is the dire state in which many countries, affluent nations in the world are. Fortunately for us, we haven't come to that level. And at the moment, we have to take it that every patient that we see could be a potential carrier and take these basic precautions. Once again, thank you very much. I mean, I just thought I will bring up these, which are very common sense approach to infection prevention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paili sir. The clarity of thought, as always, is much appreciated. And it couldn't have been better named than a common sense approach to tackling the COVID-19 crisis that we're facing now. I think we'll take the expert comments as well as the questions after the end of Dr. Betsy's lecture. So we'll move on to the second lecture without any delay. Now, the second lecture is again something very important. It just adds on to whatever Dr. V.P. Paili has just now enumerated. The topic is on how to improvise and create a PPE with locally available resources. Again, definitely makes sense because we understand that there is a limitation to the supply that we can get. So what we can do with our own resources to create a PPE. To talk about it, we have none other than Dr. Betsy Thomas, who's the principal as well as a professor of OBG in the Amala Institute of Medical Sciences at Thrissur, was the organizing secretary of Yuva Foxy 2017, and also the organizing secretary for All Kerala Congress 2018. She was also the past president of Thrissur Obstetric and Gynecology Society, as well as the past chairperson of the Oncology Committee of Kerala Federation, which did some significant work in the field. And at a personal level, one of my first teachers in obstetrics and gynecology, my senior during my undergraduation at Jawaharlal Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education and Research at Puducherry. So can we invite Betsy Madam for the next lecture? May I request Paili sir to just stop sharing the screen?
So what do I do? Stop sharing, isn't it? New share, pause or stop?
Stop, sir.
Stop share, okay.
Yes, sir. Betsy Madam? Betsy Madam? Yes, she has started sharing. Yes, madam, you can get started. Over to you, Dr. Betsy Thomas. Betsy, madam?
Yeah.
You can get
started. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Am I audible?
very much.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. All of you viewers from different parts of the country. Actually, I am just borrowing what Paili sir said in the beginning. I'm not an expert in the field. I did not know what COVID-19 was about 3 months back. And it so happens that our district Thrissur in Kerala was the place where the first case of COVID-19 was reported in the country. That was on January 30th. So maybe our preparation started a little earlier than you all, that's all. So let me come to the topic, how to improvise and create a PP with locally available resources. So this is today's statistics, what the country is facing. Our graph is going up. And regarding the various states, even though Kerala was leading a few days back, now it has come down to the 5th position with Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Delhi, Telangana in front of us. And seeing the list of viewers, we know that people from Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and other states of the country are with us. And this picture is very famous. After the last patient was discharged from his hospital in Wuhan, Dr. Ziyang is resting, but still in personal protective equipment. And this is Kerala's first healthcare worker who contracted COVID-19. And this was the photograph which was taken when she got discharged after her 2 consecutive samples became negative. And see whom she treated. 2 90+ couple. And they also got discharged a few days later. So this is the story in Kerala. We are not sure whether we are plateauing. This is the graph what we're following. Maybe the next 2 weeks will tell us where we are. This is the time when we started thinking about local resources. If it is going to be like China, Italy, US and UK, our resources are going to be depleted very fast. That is when we thought about how we can prepare PP locally. So first, let us start with making a mask. These are some slides with which I can give some commentary, and after that, if possible, I'll play the video also. So the material is non-woven fabric, 25 or 30 or 35 GSM. GSM is gram per square meter. That is the thickness of the material or the weight of the material. So we can take 1 meter of this fabric, fold it 3 times, so that each segment will have a width of 7 inches. That is for the horizontal part of the mask, 7 inches. And with 1 meter fabric, we can make around 24 masks. For filter or for the middle layer, we can use the orthopedic cast padding, which comes with a width of 4 inches, which can be kept in between the 2 layers of the non-woven fabric. Fold it and make 3 pleats. So that was the first pleat and second pleat and the third pleat on one side. Stitch it and stitch the pleats on the opposite side also. This is the cord. Cord has to be enough in length, around 36 inches, so that we can comfortably tie at the back of the head and the neck. 36-inch long cord with the same material. It is folded 2 times and stitched. And the face mask piece, which is already stitched and kept with 3 pleats on either side, is kept in the center of the cord and stitched. So we can do the same cord, we can make it like a long chain and stitch many masks at a time, so that the stitching time is also lessened. So this is a video.
Betsy madam, before you start the video, can you just switch on your video? We are unable to see you.
My video, yeah. You can see me now? Yes.
Yes, very much. Please continue, madam. Sorry for the interruption.
It's okay, sorry. So we'll go back to the mask making video. Whatever we said already, the 1 meter fabric, fold it into 3. So each segment is cut 7 into 8.
Betsy madam.
So I think the Wi-Fi is not.
Betsy madam.
Betsy, I think you explained very well with your earlier description. So shall we move on to the next one?
Actually, this is all possible because of the local community. They got stitched many masks for us within a very short while, because especially when we are in need, when many hundreds of patients are coming to our hospitals, it won't be possible for a local tailor. So what we did is we got it stitched by the community people so that it can be like raised in large number. That's what we did. And just show the
There's poor connection. I think Wi-Fi is not strong enough to pick up.
and all the materials are actually autoclavable. So we got it autoclaved before dispensing it for use. This is a locally made shoe cover made with the same material. This is the material, again, non-woven fabric, which we use for covering the autoclave trays when we send for autoclaving. Usually we throw it away without like using it for anything. So this shoe cover is also locally made out of it. So actually, and I was telling Piley sir about the shoe cover, the only point what he insisted was the stitching should not be coming on the foot side or on the toes, so that when it goes under the coverall, no stitches should be exposed outside, because the impervious nature of the shoe cover will be gone. So this is stitched in that way, the way sir told us to do. So this is the visor what sir was mentioning. So visor many people are making in different ways. Again, it is the same material. That blue material is the same material that is what we use for covering the autoclave trays, and OHP sheets. This picture shows an OHP sheet being used for visor making. Actually, some of our doctor colleagues who use spectacles, they told us to get a foam also in between the two blue holes, so that projection onto the forehead. That's what they asked for. The foam is kept for those who are using spectacles. So OHP sheets and the non-woven fabric used for visor making. So now 46-inch cord can be fixed on either side. It can be comfortably tied at the back of the head. So the point here is if you're using visor and coverall, also should be outside the coverall. But if you're using goggles, this will come over the goggles. I'll demonstrate that in the video. So this is actually with all the personal protective equipment, how to don and doff. Video is there later, but I'll just go through the steps. So ensure that you have had adequate food and fluid. Go to the washroom. Remove all the personal items on your body like watch, rings, etc. If you're wearing a spectacles, leave it there. And then change to the scrub, sanitize the hands. Follow all the 6 steps of hand sanitization and wear a pair of nitrile gloves, disposable ones. Then the shoe cover. Remove the gloves after wearing the shoe cover. Sanitize the hands again. Go through all the steps. Wear another pair of nitrile gloves. This is the coverall which we got stitched locally. It is one-piece coverall made of 90 GSM polypropylene. There is elastic at the ankle and at the wrist with a hood attached to it. Wearing the coverall, put the zip up and tie at the front. Don't put the hood at this stage. Before that, wear the N95 mask. Sir already told us about wearing the N95 mask properly. Many times healthcare workers, even after wearing the full PP, we hear that many of them are getting infected. Maybe some faults are there the way we apply PP, especially the N95 mask. Make sure it is snugly fitting and there is no leak of air at the side. And as Sir said, air should be filtered through the mask. This is checking for it. You can exhale air and check. And after that, pull up the zip and put the hood. This is the locally made visor, which is tied at the back of the head. And dispose that pair of gloves. Sanitize the hands again. And wear another pair of nitrile gloves. And if we are going for a surgical scrub, your surgical gown and sterile gloves will be worn on top of this after sanitizing the hands again. If you're going just for any other simple procedures, you have to wear 2 pairs of nitrile gloves. And this picture just shows that all the joints are free even after donning. So that was donning. And now, before you start doffing, again, sanitize the hands. Remove the outer gloves inside out. Again, sanitize and remove the visor. This is coverall being removed. The main principle here is, as far as possible, touch the inside of the coverall. If we happen to touch the outside, sanitize the hands again. So touching inside, coverall is removed, inside out. It is rolled down, inside out. Down, down, inside out. And then safely discarded. And now the shoe cover is also being removed, inside out. And safely removed into the, disposed in the bin. Now it's time to come out of the room after sanitizing the hands and remove the N95 mask, dispose it, and then remove the gloves. Go for a final hand wash or hand sanitization and change to, have a shower and change to new scrub. Let me just see whether the video can be played.
Now she's starting to doff or remove the gown step sequentially. So sanitize first. And again, what Betsy earlier explained, inside out is the way to remove the outer pair of gloves and then the visor. Because it is relatively inexpensive, it can be thrown away. If it's a goggle, we have to see whether we would throw it away or probably sterilize and use it. And here is the important time that it should be taken inside out. The whole idea is when you are moving this garment around, if it is contaminated on the outside, you would have worn it for hours, then the virus will again spread as aerosol. So that is why you try to contain it by removing it inside out. And because it is a single piece, it's a little more tricky to remove it entire like that. I can vouch that she has done this recording, so many times. All appreciation to Betsy and her team for going through this for the sake of all of us. And I hope that this will find us more practical. I remember some time ago, Ambujam was saying it takes so long to put it on. So if you have to do an emergency cesarean, how can you? Now the fact is, for donning this, they have taken just below 5 minutes. For doffing, again, only about 4 minutes. So it is not as laborious as some of the other Western audios show or videos show. That is why we thought we will show this to you. Shoe cover, some of the Western videos that we see, they don't have the shoe cover, whether it is important, but I think for us in obstetrics, no doubt that we should have the shoe cover because the lycra and the blood and everything otherwise will contaminate our dress. Whether you should wear another additional plastic apron on top of that, we feel not because this coverall is actually impervious to water. And so we may not have to put another one on because each layer that you add will make it more and more difficult to stay for hours like that. That is the other reason why we don't think we should another plastic apron on top of that. Thank you. You did very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Betsy, for that wonderful presentation. Now, we will be coming out with the entire video of this entire session, and we'll be sharing with you all. We can do it, we'll put on YouTube, and we'll share the link. With the permission of Paili sir and Betsy madam, we can probably share this video too for amongst health workers so that they can use it and follow the steps accordingly. Whoever. Sure. Fine. Now we have done with the two lectures. Are we connected to Dr. Betsy now?
Can't you see me?
No, we cannot see you. But
one second.
Audible. I'm audible, but you can't see. I guess. Yes.
Betsy madam, can you just try to you are seen also. Yeah. Thank you so much, Betsy madam. I think we just lost your connectivity for a bit. And Paili sir.
There's a big team in Amala, like management and others with COVID-19 team. And Paili sir, this video was shot according to sir's instruction. And every day we'll be calling up, giving him the video and then making all the corrections. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Betsy madam, for all that effort that you and your team took to prepare this. I know we did have a lot of discussions. 10 times more discussions would have happened with Paili sir on how to arrange this talk and how to add on the videos and the screenshots to explain it so very well. Those were the two wonderful talks that you've heard. Now, we can take in some expert comments from the list of experts that we have today, and then we move on to the questions that have been asked by our viewers. from across the country. Can we start with Shekharan sir? Shekharan sir, yeah, you are
Yes. Okay.
now. Shekharan sir's comments on the two.
On the first presentation by Professor Paili, wonderful presentation and how to make use of the available thing. He started with why health workers at higher risk, and that is obviously explained well, and we know what it is. Then what the organization has to say in the national level, the state level, and then the hospital level, well taken. And then especially for us, what we should do as a department of ONG, how to manage the obstetric cases, how to conduct the delivery, how to triage the patients, and how safely to conduct the OP procedures, and how to keep the patient, the instructions of patient coming into your OPD with a mask on, as far as possible only the patient, if not one more person only, the way they have to sit. I may add there, and they are always going to touch the table. If they are infected, if it is so, we have to take it. Probably we may sanitize the tabletop also. Probably that is all what I can say, because they are going to touch the tabletop or keep their file and other things. I advise that we should wear that glove nowadays for seeing any patient in the OPD also. That's another protective measure that he was suggesting. I was having a practical problem what to do with the Doppler that we use in the OPD for listening to the fetal heart and seeing the fetal heart rate and other things with the modern one, which is showing the incorporating the CTG onto the Doppler, handheld Doppler. You can just wipe it off probably, and probably there may not be much of a problem, because most of the cases that we see in the OPD are not positive cases, but potentially maybe potential. So take care on that side also. Then about his lecture on to that suggestion of use of the prophylactic use of hydroxychloroquine, of course, we are settled there. Only problem is those who are having impaired renal liver function or uncontrolled diabetes may be a problem with the cardiac ECG changes. So it is mandatory to have an ECG taken before starting chloroquine as ourselves, especially those who are, say, like me, who are elderly, has to have an ECG taken before starting it and get the help of a physician to start and how to continue the drug, how to monitor the usage. That is additional step which we may have to think of. We have to protect ourselves. In this context, I was wondering to listen to the news item, especially in Maharashtra, Bombay, Delhi, and in our own state. We had health workers developing the disease, infection. I was curious whether this sister at our own state had what type of a protective gear, or what was they using, whether it was given for them that it was given and still they got the disease, or what it is, we are not sure. So we may have to find out where they given the protective gear, and in spite of using it, they got the disease, or they were not given the protective gear at all, or was not given. So that is my fear. Probably in Mumbai and all 40, 50 cases, nurses are infected. Probably they may not have been given. But what about our patient, our sister, who had the disease while treating that patient? So that is one question I was sure whether they were given the protective gear, and in spite of that, or they were not given, and hence they had the disease. That is another question. So we have to take all the care, as Paili sir explaining step by step, which all steps we have to act. As a departmental head also, we have got the responsibility of protecting our own colleagues, as well as our own postgraduates who are exposed to all these things. So they have to be taught the importance of taking care, which they are very sure will be accepting our suggestions now, and how to go about it. Then regarding Betsy's presentation, wonderful presentation of utilizing the locally available material, I may suggest those girls or ladies, my colleagues, with a long hair may tie it up properly so that it may not spill over your shoulders and other things before donning the thing. So that may be just suggestion. Don't misunderstand me. It is just a suggestion, but I could see the girl was having hair falling onto the shoulders and other thing. It should be properly tied up, and probably you can tie it with something, cover it up also before donning that thing. Then there was a suggestion or some suggestion by somebody before donning off. Onto the donning off area, you go with the gear, protective gear, everything there. They suggest that you have a spray of 1 to 2% hypochlorite, wait for 5 minutes, then remove it. And because if you are treating a patient or have done a cesarean, there is every likely that this gown that we were wearing may be contaminated, very heavily contaminated. So it is better that you try to destroy as far as possible then and there itself before donning off. That is another suggestion which I could listen to somebody. People are coming with. We are just new to all these diseases and we are trying to learn. Like a public only, we are learning like others. So these are some of the information. Thank you both the speakers for the very good presentation. We benefited very much and their innovations, they're telling us to use our own common sense and suggesting how to utilize. So thank you, Paili sir. Thank you, Betsy, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Shaiju, for giving me a chance.
Thank you so much, Shekharan sir. Wonderful to hear from you. Paili sir, you want to comment on that or you will take it at the end after all the experts bring out their opinions? Sir, once again, you're...
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now you are.
2 or 3 points that Shekharan, very relevant points. First thing is how to sanitize the Doptone, the probe. I think fortunately for us, skin is not a major site where the virus is so much. So I think sanitizing with alcohol containing solution should be good enough for that. The other thing you mentioned about the hair, of course, it is clear that those who are long hair should tie it, ponytail or anything, and take care of it. That's very important right at the beginning. Just like Betsy warned us, before you down, you should see that your tummy is sufficiently full, should have gone to the toilet and should have enough calories to last. All these things you have to take care of. That question that you raised is very relevant, Shekharan, whether the sister who was so magnanimous to volunteer to look after those elderly patients, finally ending up with the infection, how did she get it? I should say that our awareness of wearing and all the etiquette that we are talking about would not have been there in the beginning. Maybe there would have been some slip up somewhere. The other question is whether these instruments that we are getting are of the quality, because the PPE that is available from some of the local manufacturers and the N95 mask that was provided with it, I don't think it's of quality. It is not airtight fitness all around. And if I am to assign, say, which will be the most important ones to prevent us from getting infection, I will put 80% mark for the N95 mask. That's the most important. And that I doubt whether the quality of the mask that we are getting, at least the one we got, it was not of the quality. It doesn't fit tightly on the side. My doubt is over that, Shekharan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paili sir, for your inputs. Can we hear from Raj Shekharan sir now, your expert comments on the 2 lectures?
Thank you, Dr. Shaijas. Both the presentations are extremely good. Dr. Paili as well as Dr. Betsy. We got a number of very, very practical points on various aspects. I just want to raise 1 or 2 points. For example, I was under the impression that when you buy PPE, I think if there are 100 deliveries, it is enough that you store about 400 or 500 pieces. But today, I just had an information from one of the hospital. Yesterday, a patient was admitted. Then she developed a PROM. And when she was admitted, a couple of PPEs were used. Then she had a cesarean section. Another 3, 4, about 4 were used. Then in the next 24 hours, there were 4 or 5 duty shifts, because in the PPE, it is very difficult to pull on for more than 4 hours. So there is a doctor, there is a nurse, and an attender. Okay. So by day 2, it was either 22 pieces of PPEs were used for that single patient. Okay. So the number of PPEs we like to collect is immensely very huge. So that brings us the relevance of the second presentation, Dr. Betsy's presentation. So in fact, we'll have to, improvise. We'll have to identify ways and means by which we'll have to do it ourselves. But one or 2 points, for example, when you select this material, when you buy the polypropylene sheet, etc., we'll have to see that it is really liquid penetration resistant. Because when we go for the Medical Supplies Corporation for selecting these tenders, we specifically pour water and see whether it is a liquid penetration resistant, because these companies may fool us, because both these varieties may look alike. So let us specifically look into that. Then the non-woven, which has already been highlighted by both the speakers. Then regarding the stitching, there is some objection, because when you stitch these gowns, etc., a large number of pores appear along this stitching line. That is why some tapes are pasted over these suture lines in the PP. So that is something, I don't know whether it's just a theoretical information, but otherwise, following this stitching, a large number of holes will be there in the PP, which can be potentially dangerous. So these are a couple of things probably we can get clarification from the speakers. Thank you, Shaijas, for this wonderful session.
Thank you so much, Rajsekharan sir. Paili sir, comments on that?
Yeah, the first point that you raised, Ashian, is very relevant. This is one of the reasons why people say that you should not think about a prolonged or a difficult labor. Because 4 or 5 hours, and if the patient goes to 36 hours, you know how many teams have to change. And each team taking at least 3 or 4 pairs, 4 sets of PPE. And finally, when she went to theater, you know, the anesthesia and the neonatology team also. So altogether, I am not surprised they took 22. So one of the reasons why people are saying, why not take for cesarean is this one. And second thing is, when you have a prolonged contact of say 36 hours with a positive patient, how many people are getting exposed, and the chance of the healthcare worker getting the infection is so much more. So one of the arguments for putting straight away for cesarean is that one. I feel that there is some substance in that. This particular situation that you mentioned, I would have probably thought about at the first examination itself. It's going to be a long labor, probably for a cesarean. I am not for cesarean for everybody. But at the same time, I feel that we should not contemplate a prolonged labor or a difficult labor, instrumentation and all that. That is about that one. And the other thing about stitching, I'm sure Betsy will have her comments on that. So if it is a easy delivery vaginally, I'm all for vaginal delivery. Otherwise, you should think about cesarean. The point that Ambujam raised some time ago in our discussion was, suppose you put a patient for labor like this and suddenly you have to do a cesarean. The time taken for donning that is so long that you may not be able to save a situation. That is the other argument for. But that is why I particularly wanted to show this video, so that you can don a PPE in about 5 minutes. So that is not a major argument. But what is important is you should not have a prolonged labor or a difficult labor in a patient like this. This is at the present stage of our knowledge. And please remember, all that we are saying, all the guidelines that we are thinking about are, as we call, within quotations, active or living guidelines. As evidence comes, we may change it. For example, about the transplacental transmission of the virus, we were earlier very sure that is not there. But now there are some evidences coming in that it may be there. Like that, we should be prepared to change. Betsy will make comment on the stitching part.
Okay, stitching of the shoe cover, I personally monitored because Pailisa had told me there should not be any stitches exposed. So made sure that it is a large single piece and made sure like all the sutures, whatever is coming will be under the coverall. That's why I could monitor shoe cover like that. But the other one, the coverall, I have not monitored. Only when Rajendra was telling, only I just thought about it. Anyway, I'll go back to the tailor and see what exactly they are doing. But what I learned is there are only minimum joints. It's a single piece and only minimum joints are there. So anyway, we can communicate to them the way like I got information today.
You can have a pleat over that suture line.
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, the way they can avoid actually make it even airtight by the suturing. That is what I would think.
Okay. Fine.
Some taping over the stitch, sir. Some tape over the stitch line. You put some watertight tape paste on it, or a tape sort of a thing, so that it is preventing that leak or whatever it is by the multiple years. So we have that tape it on.
What I would have thought was, sorry, Betsy.
The company stitched one also, we didn't see any difference actually. To be very frank, we got the company stitched one and then got it exactly like that. Personally, I didn't see anything very special over the sutures. Then we have to go back and check. I'll do that.
There are two varieties, actually, by stitching and then something like pasting, something like that.
Yeah.
The Caron, etc., they give without stitches.
Yeah, there is a way of sealing.
Yeah,
a way of sealing. But the problem is, if it's not properly done, that will completely open up also there.
Yeah,
come on. So we'll stitch it and then tape it off. Probably.
It may be just a minor point.
Yeah, okay, right.
Thank you.
So I think Paili is telling something, but your audio is muted now.
Yeah, I think as Sharon suggested, it's possible to use the suturing itself or stitching itself, but with an additional pleat there. And I'm sure if you discuss Betsy with Father Joy and his team, maybe they will find a way out. And we should appreciate Father Joy, Batoli, who had been the helper for all these things, isn't it? We should acknowledge his contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Time to bring in Dr. Professor K. Ambujam. Madam is the president of the Kerala Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Madam, over to you for your expert comments.
Thank you very much, Paili sir and Betsy. It was very useful and practical approach actually. I know how much of pains has been taken to take this video and all that. And actually the doffing and donning, one comment I would like to make it, the doffing and donning area that is inside the labor room complex or whatever it is should not be crossing over. Actually the path should be different. That is one thing. Another concern which was raised by one of my postgraduates who conducted delivery was that this PPE equipment is it's not all that impermeable. And she said she had some soiling, and so I suggested whether to wear the veterinary gloves also, because after the inner glove, another veterinary gloves and then an outer glove. And actually we were using the latex gloves, and we were actually not throwing off the first glove, and then we were using hand rubs in between and putting the next and so on. So the gloves which Betsy showed was actually nitride gloves, and I would like to know from Betsy what difference does it make and how to go about it. Whether because when we use 3 gloves, actually it's very difficult actually to actually do whatever we are doing with the sensation of the hands actually with 3 gloves on is sometimes very difficult, especially when you do a surgery. So, and another thing is the PPE with all these, this thing actually is for examination of the patient, and what extra precaution for vaginal examination, what extra precaution for conducting the delivery where you can get soiling. And cesarean section, actually, I think when we are careful about the blood loss, the spillage and the soiling is, we can actually delivery. Should we be concerned about the soiling? But we already know that the body fluids are not supposed to be infectious. So I would like to have Betsy clarify some of these points regarding the gloves and
Yes, madam. Actually, see, even though we are using more than 2 pairs, finally, she was wearing only 2 pairs of nitrile gloves. That means the first one after the shoe cover was removed, the second one was also removed, and then only the third one we were wearing. And if we are using a surgical, if we are going for a surgical procedure, we are wearing surgical sterile gloves on top of that. So at a time, only 2 gloves are coming. Only if surgical scrub is not being done, 2 nitrile gloves are being worn at the end. So only 2 at a time, whichever the procedure is. Either it will be a nitrile glove on the top or a sterile gloves on the top, depending on what the procedure is. I hope I'm clear.
So the nitrile gloves it's not sterile.
No, it's not sterile. No. It is for the routine things what we showed. Actually, if it's for a surgical sterile procedure, we have to, on top of all this, one nitrile glove. We have to sanitize the hands. Again, wear the surgical gown and the sterile gloves on top of that.
Okay.
Nitrile gloves, disposable and cheap. That is why we were showing that actually.
Okay.
And even for routine
so any
things.
role for this veterinary gloves, because that reaches up to the elbow and that can prevent soiling, because I don't know this PPE equipment when conducting a vaginal delivery, it's not all that impermeable. One of my PGs told me that she had some soiling, and actually it was not a suspect even, but we were trying out in a normal patient.
Maybe we have to think about the stitches again, what Paili sir and Dasharan sir was telling. Maybe the stitches are causing the problem. We don't know.
Okay.
Suture line.
Anyway,
Suture line.
very nice, Betsy. Very nice, practical, and so much of pains you have taken to have this actually on your own to produce it. Actually, father needs special appreciation for that. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
If I may comment on that imperviousness, you see,
yes, sir.
The material that Betsy showed us is 90 GSM, but the material that we are getting made by the suppliers, we are not all that sure. If it is not that thick and proper, then through that, some prolonged contact, the water or the fluid will seep in. If you use a veterinary glove, that is good because additional protection. The good thing for us is, as was mentioned by, I think you, the body fluids, vaginal secretions, blood and all that are not heavy carriers of the virus. It's mainly the respiratory secretions. So that way, we don't have to worry that much. Even if say little happen to touch on our, a little vaginal secretion happen to touch on our skin, we don't have to worry that much, provided we wash it off immediately like that. Regarding vaginal examination, I mean, anything extra. You can have your usual vaginal examination tray and then do it like that. That's what I should think.
And so I think, sir, during actually conducting the delivery, is it better to have that disposable gown also, so that soiling doesn't take place?
You mean to say
regarding
the plastic?
Yeah, not the plastic one. That HIV, the gown we use usually for the disposable gown.
I mean, you are asking that because you are otherwise not using routinely. For all of us, we routinely use that to conduct normal delivery. So
we don't use that.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean, it should not be a cloth gown. It should be this sort of impervious material that is disposable. Yes, you are right. Shaijas, we are not able to hear you. Shaijas, we are not able to hear you.
Yes. Sir, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, fine. Time to bring in another important person, Dr. Ajit S., who's the professor and the head of the Department of OBG at Pariyaram Medical College, the government medical college now, renamed as Government Medical College at Kannur. I don't know whether fortunately or unfortunately, but we have seen more COVID positive pregnancy patients than probably anyone else in India. So trying to bring in Ajit sir for your very valuable opinion on the two lectures that you've had and any other inputs that you would love to share.
Thank you, Shaijas, very much. About Pailisa's, actually it was a really common sense approach, whatever he suggested, nothing more to add to it. But I have two practical problems when we wear this PPE. One is to monitor the fetal heart rate. It is practically very difficult to use the stethoscope. We have to go for the CTG without auscultating the patient. We have to first straight away use the CTG. And we all know the limitations of CTG. So as sir suggested, we have to go for a low threshold cesarean section if it is a prolonged labor. And another thing is, again, when you do the cesarean section also, the problem is if you are not getting a very experienced sister, staff nurse, actually it's very difficult to communicate what you want to do. Even when we talk something, she won't hear it properly when you wear the full PPE. So that is another problem. So you need an experienced staff nurse to assist you. And another thing, I think it's better to wear the plastic apron also along with the PPE because we don't know the quality of PPE we are getting. And another question I would like to ask Betsy, Dr. Betsy, is from where you get the fabric? Because that is one of the problems we face now, especially in the era of this lockdown. How to get
Actually, I was expecting this question. Because I saw many participants are from outside Kerala, I asked Father Joy, who was doing this for us. Actually, what Father was telling is in Kerala, he can supply, he can make 15 or 20 local tailoring units. He can do this, monitor this, and then do it in Kerala. Outside Kerala, he was telling if he gets, because many viewers are from outside Kerala. If we get a bulk order, he can supply outside also. Actually, the material we are obtaining from Ernakulam and stitching is being done in Thrissur, but he says he can open more, at least 15 to 20 tailoring units in Kerala. Actually, some people have contacted him, maybe a tie-up with the government. That's also Father was asking today. I spoke with him today because I was expecting this question.
Okay, that is a nice thing.
How much does it cost? Can Betsy, should I just?
Yes.
It is not very expensive. It is less than the company price. Whatever the Care On company is giving, it's less than that.
Okay.
Another question I would like to ask Paili sir is there any need for a modification of the antenatal checkup? We know the conventional antenatal checkup in the first trimester, every month, second trimester again every month, then every 2 weeks. Is it necessary for the patients to come so frequently?
Not at all. Actually, you may know that we had made some suggestions and the government was kind enough to accept it and has come out as a government order modifying the antenatal care in Kerala. Basically, what it says is, first, you may date the pregnancy, first scan, make sure it is intrauterine. Then your patient has to come only for the NT, then the 20-week scan. Another one, you can even skip the 28, but we would suggest a 28, another one at 34, and after that, for delivery. So this is what we have done, and this is accepted by the government, and that is set out as a circular for Kerala. To answer one of the other points that you mentioned about the difficulty to monitor these babies, true. I mean, we straight away, by palpating the abdomen itself, we can know where exactly the bag, where exactly you are likely to hit the heart or the aorta, and put the probe straight there and then use the CTG. As you said, we cannot auscultate, we cannot use the pinard, so you have to go by the CTG only for this. And these CTGs which are used, we have to be, as Sagaran said earlier, like the Doptone, here also we have to sanitize the probe and then get that for reuse, because we cannot throw away a CTG machine like that. About the plastic apron on top, the only problem is even this PPE, a 90 GSM garment, on top of that, another disposable sterile gloves, in between another plastic, will be really difficult to walk, stay there. And maybe the air conditioner is also switched off. In that case, it may be difficult. If your GSM is good, if the initial PPE is good garment, and on top of that, if you have another disposable one, I would think that the chance of your own personal scrub getting soiled is very unlikely. That the same thing I would say about the veterinary gloves that Ambuja mentioned. If you have elastic around your wrist for the GSM and your gloves goes on top of that, it's unlikely that it will get soiled. But very often what will happen is the junction between the gloves from below and the elastic will move up, and there can be an exposed part of the skin over there. So if you have the long sleeve, long arm, long gloves, certainly put it on. Too many gloves, especially if you are going to do a cesarean or a conduct delivery, takes away the sense of touch that we are all used to. So I would say only 2 layers. The nitrile gloves, why should be nitrile and not latex? I really don't know the reason. I asked this to the AIIMS Nina, and she also doesn't know why it should be. They specifically wrote that it should be nitrile gloves only and not latex. Latex, some people have a problem of allergy, but otherwise, I don't see any reason why we cannot use the latex gloves for our usual use, which we are used to.
Is it because it's powderless, sir? Powderless?
Yeah, but why it should become that important? Because you are thinking about the powder moving around and carrying the virus like that? Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I couldn't, we can get latex gloves without powder also, you know. That is also there. But I don't think that, I couldn't find an explanation for that. experienced staff nurse. The problem, once you have put on all these things, you may not even know who it is that you are talking to. Leave alone, you cannot understand properly what they are saying also. You would have probably seen that what was posted by Serena today, somebody going home with purported to be the husband, but turned out to be somebody else when she reached home, like that. So it's quite possible that you may not be able to identify who you are dealing with. So for the mask, as well as for the PPE, they even put the name on. And this is from outside also. They put the name on top so that you can identify who you are talking to.
Can I, yeah, sorry to interrupt. We need to move on a little bit more faster.
Sure.
Yeah, time to bring in another person who's Dr. Venugopal. Sir is the Secretary of Kerala Federation. Sir, for your input, sir.
Just 2 words. I think those who attended this webinar would have benefited a lot from 2 things. One is from Paili sir's experience, and second is the way Betsy spoke. I think quite a few of the participants would have been encouraged about their DIY or do it yourself, because it's the time has passed when we are depending for resources from all the others. So thank you, Shaijas, for providing the platform. Shekharan sir, Rajshekharan sir, and all the Ambuja madam and experts for your inputs. I think it benefited all, whether you are practicing obstetrics actively or not. I think it's very important need of the webinar. So best wishes, and I hope we go through this difficult phase without much problem to health workers. I think that's very important that all of us stay protected. So I think from that view, it was a wonderful experience. Thank you, Shaijas.
Thank you so much, Venu sir. Can we get some quick inputs from Dr. Sujitra Sudhir, who was the past chairperson of Adolescent Committee of Kerala Federation? Madam, for your inputs, please. Madam, you need to switch on your audio. Madam.
Hello.
Yes, madam. You're audible.
Yes. No, I really enjoyed the talks by Dr. Paili and Dr. Betsy, and also the inputs by all the others. Actually, I'm working in a periphery, so we are without any PPE kit actually, and we are wearing the surgical gown, the disposable surgical gown with the cap and the gloves and everything. That is how we are conducting ourselves, and that is the only resource we have. So hearing all this of making it by ourselves, I think it is really great. And the things that we are doing apart from what you have said is, one is we have taken off all the chairs for the bystanders in our OP. Because if they sit on the chair, they will put their hands and elbows on our table. So we just make them stand a little away, and the patient who comes is immediately transferred to the examination table. We examine her. After that, we call the bystander. Usually we don't allow them to come into the hospital. We tell them to sit in the vehicle itself. So we call them on the mobile, they come, we just tell them about it, about the condition of the patient, and then they leave. Then another thing is that even in the labor room and post-operative, before we used to have bystanders in the labor room. Now we ask them to talk on the video call if they want to speak to the patient. So, and also we are wearing the plastic apron on top of the disposable gown while we are conducting the deliveries, and using that long gloves. So we find it very comfortable to take the deliveries with that. I don't know how far it is protecting us, but that is what we are all practicing at the moment. And we are putting 2 masks on our face because we feel that the mask is the most important thing. And all the time we are covering our hair with the cap also.
Thank you so much, madam. Can we take some inputs from Dr. Kunjumuddin, who is the chairperson of the Reproductive Medicine Committee of Kerala Federation? Dr. KM?
Thank you, Dr. Shaijas, for the wonderful webinar. And as usual, Paili sir's common sense approach was actually, as usual, sir's sixth sense. And Betsy's talk was fantastic. And coming to some few points where, see, all the speakers were pointing about the obstetric situations. But we generally, myself, Venu, Shaijas, we are all mostly seeing reproductive medicine patients. As a general principle, we have stopped seeing most of these OP patients. We are not giving booking. We stopped stimulation. We stopped embryo transfer. But in spite of that, many patients are walk-in. They are coming from very far off places by taking permission from police. Lot of hurdles they are facing. They are coming. So we cannot just send them back, that telling that we will not see you and you have to go back, because they have taken all the troubles and coming. So in that situation, we have to see them. At least we have to advise them what to do next. Even though we stopped stimulation, as I said earlier. So what we generally do, we generally use a 3-ply mask, because here at Perindalmanna, Indian Medical Association Perindalmanna branch was giving mask free to all its members, few sets. And we have sourced visors. We are getting visors from place near Palakkad. That place is called Kanjikode Industries Forum. They are, hope you can see visors we are getting from them, and use that along with the gloves. As sir has mentioned, it is always better to use gloves, but at the same time, in most of the institutions, there is EMR. So if the EMR is being entered by your secretary, then it is fine. But that may not be available in all places. We ourselves should be entering the EMR. So that situation, using the same gloves to see the patient and using the mouse, keyboards and all, it is really risky. So that's the situation. Because the patients are less, we can use one set of gloves per patient. That will be much safe. Otherwise, this keyboard and mouse itself will contaminate your hands later on. So these are the few things. And if the lockdown gets postponed, I'm quite sure that these patients will flow in more and more numbers. They will just break the lockdown measures and they will come in large numbers. And that situation we have to face, and we have to be careful. And anyway, thank God this quarantine period for the abroad patients are already over. The first 14 days are over after the international flights have been stopped on 22nd of March. So, but if everything is getting opened again, still more and more patients will flow from other states and other countries to Kerala, thinking that Kerala is a much safer place. Thank you. Thank you, Shailesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. KM, for that inputs. I think some very, very valid points from him on what we need to expect.
I got a point to the infertile specialist. Just delay anybody getting pregnant. You don't make them pregnant now by your Vespa treatment, because we still do not know whether there is any effect like the Zika virus. Because this virus infection is the new infection which is coming. We had so many coronavirus, but we do not know whether there is going to be any teratogenic effect, and we do not know. In the world, we are blind on this aspect. So you don't have the special treatment and somebody becoming pregnant and exposed to this infection. Please don't.
Just to add on to what Shegaran sir and Dr. KM said, the most funniest thing that is happening is people who have been posted for IVF and not being done are becoming pregnant by themselves, because the primary reason was not being available. Now they are there together all the time. So a lot of spontaneous pregnancies are probably likely to happen, and probably
sorry for that.
In the months to come. If I can take in a few questions, I think we probably can take 10 more minutes, a little bit of overshoot at time, but a lot of these questions, they're close to 100 or 100 plus, but many of them have already been answered because of the points that have been raised by the experts. Now, there's a question from Dr. Babita Mutt. Question to Paili sir, whether a cloth mask, whether it can be safe for health workers. So if you can just unmute, yes, sir.
Yeah, the cloth mask, is it?
Yes, sir. Cloth mask, whether it's safe for health workers.
What I showed, I hope you understand that it doesn't have that much of a filtering efficiency to take care of the virus. So I would not recommend that for somebody who is conducting delivery or dealing with a patient. That is good enough for us giving the saline micro droplets to the patient, and patients giving to us also. That will prevent it. But for virus, it is not filtered enough.
Yes. A question from Hina Patel. Final take on hydroxychloroquine for the safety of health workers.
I have no ambiguity about it. I have no hesitation to recommend that healthcare workers should take it. But we can modify the dose. Even ICMR had said that for those looking after a positive patient should be given it. but the dose they are giving is like almost therapeutic dose, which I feel is unnecessary. We have, even before this became a controversy, there was a feeling that one tablet will keep sufficient level concentration in the lungs for 3 weeks. So if you take 2 tablets, 12 hours apart or 24 hours apart, or 12 hours apart, first day, and then weekly 1 tablet, that should be good enough.
Another
1
question.
tablet, I mean 400 milligram. If it's 200, then you have to take 2.
Another question from Dr. Aisha Salam on, should we wear a PPE for all cesareans in the present scenario?
I mean, whether it is, if you can, if you have it, and if you feel more comfortable, do it. But we have to sometimes take a calculated risk, isn't it? Even though I said every patient in front of you is a potential carrier, on that basis, we cannot move around. So that is why we do a sort of a risk scoring. Somebody who had contact, somebody with upper respiratory symptoms, then they score higher, and we have to be extra careful. I think practically that is the only way. But if you have it, and then it is not enough just for you to wear, your team has to wear. So for every cesarean, you want to do a PPE on PPE, that may not be all that practical. That is why we have to probably do a sort of a risk scoring and then decide. That's what I think.
Okay. Another question from Dr. Mayuri Ahuja. What about a pregnant healthcare worker? What protocol they should follow, especially if they happen to be an obstetrician themselves?
I don't want to ask whether you yourself are pregnant, but anyway, the point I want to say is this. Pregnancy, as Shehan also mentioned, we are still not sure its implications. Even though we point out that maternal mortality has not been high. Unfortunately, the first case happened in Mumbai. Probably there was a case before that, but we haven't heard about more. There was a person on the ECMO in China. There was a doubt whether another patient, pregnant or a potential maternal mortality, was on ECMO. What has happened to them, we have no idea. So considering that we have nearly 80,000+ total deaths and only 2 or 3 maternal deaths, is very reassuring. But we should also understand the number of pregnant patients who had been through this are so few. So we cannot just say that, oh, pregnancy, it is okay and safe and all that. It's not so. Especially in the 3rd trimester, if somebody gets pregnant, get the infection, it has to be a matter of concern. So any pregnant woman, to come to the point, we should take extra precaution. If possible, to avoid a possible exposure, avoid it. That's how I'll put it.
Another question from Dr. Durga Shankar Das on whether N95 mask, whether it can be sterilized and reused.
I mentioned it. There are different ways of sterilizing it. Peter Tsai, who was the innovator of the mask, himself has come out with various methods of sterilization and reuse. In fact, if you go through the IMA eMedi news, and this today's news also tells us about how to sterilize and reuse. Peter Tsai had an article on how we can sterilize and reuse, and the methods that he had recommended are the ones which I mentioned, that we can keep it at 70 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes, but you should not be holding it close to any metal because the temperature can go up. As you can imagine, it is a polypropylene, same material chemically like our proline. And if the temperature goes up, it will change its shape. It can even melt. So that is why 70 degrees for 30 minutes, or even dip it in boiling water, it will stand it. You can dry it, you can reuse it. And I showed you how AIIMS has recommended to its members, they give to each employee 4 or 5. They give 5, but every 4 days you rotate so that in those 4 days, the one that you used would have been free of live virus. So these are the different ways of reusing it. But don't use alcohol.
Question from Dr. Usha about, I hope it's about a COVID positive patient. Whether can we wait till 40 weeks without any elective induction immediately, and probably, I think she meant reducing chances of ending up in a cesarean section 2.
Very, very sensible question. See, this is what I was discussing with Ajit also. He has a 34, 36 or weeks pregnant or 38 weeks pregnant. Let us wait. In about 10 to 15 days, she will get, free of virus. So it is much safer for us to do. Unless there is a definite indication at a person who is before 40 weeks, wait till that time. But at 40 weeks and beyond, I do not know. I will go ahead with my induction. So the induction protocol I have changed like this. Previously, we were offering everybody at 39 weeks a chance for elective induction, which we don't. Especially if it's a positive patient at 38 weeks or so, I will wait for her to get into labor. If she gets into labor with still virus shedding, we will take it. But if she goes to another 10 days or 12 days and with hydroxychloroquine, if she loses the virus and comes to us free of virus, much safer for us, isn't it? That's how I look at it.
A question from Gopinathan sir on, do you change the glove after an abdominal examination for every patient?
That is what I said. Between patients, I usually only sanitize or wash. For me, I wash between patients with soap. And we can sanitize, that may be good enough after abdominal examination. But if you have a few patients to be seen, every time using the sanitizer, my skin doesn't tolerate it. So that is why I suggested you can put on examination gloves and sanitize the outside of that gloves and reuse. Otherwise, for every patient, you can even change. After all, is it Gobi from Edapal?
No.
I assume. Yeah, because the examination gloves are not that expensive. So I would think I will, if I am not to the proper sanitization with that is not that easy because you have to use it for 20 seconds. And 20 seconds may appear to be a short time, but when you wait for 20 seconds, it's a long time between patients. So when you suggest these things, you have to be careful. I probably use a gloves and then throw it off because so my understanding, it may cost only about 2 rupees or 3 rupees for a pair.
Okay. I think we take the last question because we are a little bit over time. The question is from Dr. Kurian Joseph. A term patient with a temperature of 100 degrees wants induction of labor. If there is a membrane rupture, is there any change in the protocol?
I don't know of a protocol for that. Is it Kurian Joseph from Chennai? Kurian from Chennai? I should assume it should be Kurian. I don't know of any protocol in Kurian because we don't have anything like that. But I think we should have a common sense approach. If she has fever, and you have a reason for suspecting COVID, and I would see how quickly I will be able to get her through. Fever is a sign of the infection. And if the lung is not already affected, the speed with which lungs get affected in these patients from those who have experienced it, they say is so rapid. So if she has respiratory symptoms and fever and in, say, labor, I would see how soon she can end up in a delivery. If she's take long, under regional anesthesia for a cesarean rather than, I think we have to individualize situation. If your question is whether you will rupture the membrane, in this case, fortunately, rupture of membrane have any additional implications other than in an ordinary patient. That's what I should think.
I think since you're short of time, it's time to wind up. So many questions that are pouring in. A lot of people enjoyed the webinar. A lot of positive feedbacks coming from various parts of India. N number of questions on how clearly Paili sir and Dr. Betsy enumerated the entire essence of the talk and made it so clear. So my privilege to thank everyone. I think just because we are short of time, we are unable to take more questions. Thank you all for coming in and joining in. Thanks a lot, Paili sir, for taking out time to prepare this for us.
If anybody has anything where they think we can help, if there's anything they think we can help, they can email. That's what I would suggest. vp.paili@gmail.com. I had given the email address at the beginning. Anything pressing, I can do.
Can I share one happy news?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Actually, we had 2 patients. One is at 34 weeks and another one is at 39 weeks. And both of them actually today became negative now.
Oh,
right? So
Brilliant.
2 negative results, and actually we discharged the 34 weeks weaker.
Waiting, So
yeah. Now the 39 weeks, she is also negative.
Oh, nice.
So we can very more boldly, with relaxation, try for an option, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. there is probably a point in waiting to. So thanks a lot to both the speakers.
Ajit, yes, which we had discussed before, you should keep all the data properly because not many people have such patients. So everybody is waiting to hear your experience.
Yeah, definitely we will do so.
Yes. So thank you so much, Paili sir, as well as Dr. Betsy, for preparing this specially for this webinar. I think probably nobody has dealt with it in this present circumstances before us. So it's very important that we project this common sense approach and how we can innovate with our own available local resources. Thanks a lot, Paili sir and Betsy madam, one more time. Thanks a lot to Shekaran sir, Rajshekaran sir, Ambuja madam, Ajit sir, Venugopal sir, Sujitra madam, and Dr. Kunju Moideen for being the experts for this entire session. Thanks a lot, Kerala Federation, as well as Foxy, as well as ICOG for this collaboration. Thanks a lot, Dr. Parag Biniwale, as well as Dr. Mandagini Naik from ICOG for giving us 1 credit hour for this webinar. And I hope we are all getting used to the new way of learning, which is the webinar. COVID has made us do unusual things, but in a positive way. This is something which you have all learned. We have all learned to share our screen, share knowledge in the best manner possible, and to disseminate knowledge even when we are locked down in our own houses or in our own places. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining in. Hope this has been a very fruitful 1.5 to 2 hours for all of you who have logged into us from various parts of the country. As Paili sir said, any other queries that you have, you can directly mail him and he'll be more than happy to clarify. We'll bring out the entire video as a YouTube link and we'll be sharing in the same platforms through which you got to know about this webinar. So it will reach you for sure. And then probably the donning and duffing videos with Paili sir and Betsy madam's permission, we can bring out a video of that also to be shared on a public platform so that people know about it and every health worker can make use of it and protect themselves during this COVID times. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay safe wherever you are. It's stay back home time. Spend a little bit more extra time with your family, but at the same time, take care of yourself with all that what we have discussed today. And we hope to remain healthy, protect our patients, but at the same time, continue our practice and do the needful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shaijas.
More